Hi, folks. Welcome to the Bookwell's crew. I'm Gerry Matthews. Before we get on to today's topic, I would really appreciate it if you would click on to the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you. This podcast is the third in a series, and with these short podcasts, what I'm doing is looking for insights into various subjects, or maybe supplying insights, hopefully. Anyway, I hope that you agree. Today's topic is going to be pareidolia. People always complain about its appearance in Sasquatch research, but seldom discuss how it works. So let's get into it by starting off with a simple context. Now, when you were a kid, did you ever lay in a field and stare at the clouds and imagine the faces and shapes that they resembled? Then you gave it a minute and they would transform into something totally different. Most likely, you didn't know that there was a term for what you were experiencing, and that was pareidolia. Now, most kids catch on pretty soon that your eyes can play tricks on you when you see a face staring back at you from some inanimate object. But what they probably didn't know was that this was a skill that humans and even chimps naturally develop. I was surprised to hear that myself. Did you know facial features aren't the only thing that we see when we're experiencing pareidolia? Studies have found that we can also detect age, emotion, and gender. And strangely enough, the vast majority of these images are perceived as male. Sadly, this flies in the face of my hypotheses back in the day about women who appeared to become more attractive the nearer it got to closing time at the local pub. I didn't know that could have been pareidolia too. But that's a topic for another day. I think this will be a good time to take a gander at what this pareidolia phenomenon is all about.
A grilled cheese sandwich with burn marks, resembling the image of the Virgin Mary, sells for $28,000 on eBay. A woman makes the news for claiming to see the ghost of a long-dead relative in the fog outside her house. You lie down in the grass on a sunny day and point out a cloud that's shaped like Darth Vader's head to your friend. Why do people seem to recognize faces in their surroundings so often? Since people are social creatures, their brains are evolutionarily wired to recognize faces, especially other human faces. In human history, it's been less potentially harmful to be overly cautious because you think you see enemy tribes and predators everywhere than to be completely oblivious to the lion that is stalking you. Thus, the facial recognition mechanism tends to be overactive in people, leading them to see things like the Virgin Mary in their grilled cheese sandwiches. Pareidolia is the tendency to pick out meaningful patterns or recognizable images from sets of random data. Face pareidolia is one of the most common kinds of pareidolia, where a person specifically thinks they see faces when presented with ambiguous visual data. In astrophysicist Carl Sagan's 1995 book, A Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, he first made an evolutionary explanation for why people experience pareidolia. He theorized that for survival purposes, humans needed to quickly identify faces in poor visibility to determine if the newcomer is a friend or enemy. Also, he argued that parents formed stronger bonds of affection with children that easily recognized them than with children who were slow in recognition. Thus, it's advantageous to have pareidolia and be super perceptive of images that look like faces. Pareidolia doesn't only come in the form of overactive facial recognition. It refers to the tendency to mistakenly identify any objects, creatures, or even spoken messages from random visual or auditory data. In the news, we often hear about horrific cases where police open fire on unarmed, innocent black youths, claiming that they thought these adolescents were holding weapons. Some of these cases occur at night, in low lighting and poor visibility, and the victim of police brutality is holding some other object, like a wallet or a pack of Skittles, that is supposedly mistaken for a weapon. These examples show the effects of pareidolia working together with various other racial stereotypes and cognitive biases. Hopefully, spreading awareness about pareidolia will make you think twice about your split-second perceptions of reality before you act on them.
In an odd way, the pareidolic images we discover tend to depict things about which we are most interested, whether it be people, puppies, or Sasquatch. Finding such embedded images can be fun and interesting for the most part, but for some, they can also fuel obsessiveness and paranoia. As Leon Thompson would say, do you want to continue on like this, or do you want to know what you really saw? You can enjoy finding pareidolic images, of course, but keep in mind that a healthy outlook on what you are seeing should be tempered with the realization that it's not really there. If you go to a dictionary, you'll see pareidolia is the tendency for our mental perception to impose a meaningful interpretation on nebulous stimulus, usually visually, so that one sees an object pattern or meaning where there is none. Now, common examples are perceived images of animal faces or forms in the clouds and landscapes, and seeing faces emerge from inanimate objects. The concept of pareidolia may extend to include hidden messages in recorded music played in reverse or at higher or lower than normal speeds, and hearing indistinct voices or music in random noises, such as that produced by air conditioners or fans.
Imagine opening a bag of chips only to find Santa Claus looking back at you. Or turning the corner to see a smile as wide as a building. Humans see faces in all kinds of mundane objects, but these faces aren't real. They're illusions due to a phenomenon known as face pareidolia. So why exactly does this happen? And how far can this distortion of reality go? Humans are social animals, and reading faces is an important part of our ability to understand each other. Even a glimpse of someone's face can help you determine if you've met them before, what mood they're in, and if they're paying attention to you. We even use facial features to make snap judgments about a person's potential trustworthiness or aggression. To capture all this vital information, humans have evolved to be very sensitive to face-like structures. Whenever we see something, our brain immediately starts working to identify the new visual stimuli based on our expectations and prior knowledge. And since faces are so important, humans have evolved several regions of the brain that enable us to identify them faster than other visual stimuli. Whereas recognizing most objects takes our brain around 1/4 of a second, we can detect a face in just 1/10 of a second. It makes sense that we'd prioritize identifying faces over everything else, but brain imaging studies have revealed that regions may actually be too sensitive, leading them to find faces where they don't exist. In one study, participants reported seeing illusory faces in over 35% of pure noise images shown to them, despite the fact that nothing was there. It might seem concerning that our brains can be so wrong so often, but these illusory faces might actually be a byproduct of something evolutionarily advantageous. Since processing all the visual input we encounter quickly and correctly is an enormous computational effort for the brain, this kind of hypersensitivity might act as a useful shortcut. After all, seeing illusory faces is usually harmless, while missing a real face can lead to serious issues. But for hypersensitivity to be more helpful than harmful, our brains also need to be quick at determining when a face is real and when it isn't. So how fast can our brains tell when they've been duped? To answer this question, researchers used a form of brain imaging known as magnetoencephalography. By measuring the magnetic fields caused by electric currents in the brain, this technique allows us to track changes in brain activity at the scale of milliseconds. With this tool, researchers revealed that the brain generally recognizes a face as illusory within 1/4 of a second, around the same time that we can identify most non-face visual stimuli. However, even after our brain knows the face is fake, we can still see it in the object. And by messing with these brain areas, we can further impact our ability to differentiate between fact from fiction. In one study, researchers stimulated a participant's fusiform face area while they were looking at a non-face object. As a result, the participant reported momentarily seeing facial features despite the object remaining unchanged. And while looking at a real face, stimulation of this same area created perceived distortions of the eyes and nose. These studies suggest that certain features are crucial to face detection. Just 3 dots can be enough to represent eyes and a mouth. People will even assign gender, age, and emotion to illusory faces. It's unclear whether a person's culture or individual history impacts these perceptions, but we do know that pareidolia isn't unique to the human experience. Rhesus macaque monkeys show eye movements similar to our own when observing pareidolia-inducing objects and real faces, suggesting that this phenomenon is baked deep into our social primate brains. So next time you see an unexpected face in a coffee, car, or cabinet, remember that it's just your brain working overtime, not to miss the faces that really matter.
So, do you remember the Rorschach test? Well, this is where pareidolia is also used as a tool. And it's used as a tool in an attempt to gain insight into a person's mental state, I should say. The Rorschach is a test that elicits thoughts and feelings of respondents that are projected onto ambiguous inkblot images. In the Rorschach inkblot test, the person is asked to describe what they see in the images. The therapist then answers. This projective test is frequently portrayed as a way of revealing a person's unconscious thoughts, motives, or desires. Or shapeless depictions of creatures, which are posted on Facebook pages, complete with arrows and circles, proclaiming this image to be the next great authentic piece of evidence that Sasquatch exists. So, maybe at this point, there is a question that begs to be asked. Can we be certain of anything that we see? Is the possible object really there? Or is it your mind merely taking your perception and projecting it onto the object in question? Is it a stump? Or is it your mind just catering to your interest in Sasquatch by giving you a false visual of what could be an actual Sasquatch? Let's take a few examples here. Okay, look at this demon lurking around that tree. Isn't that amazing? And all it is a bunch of deadfall. Or what about this friendly troll? And for you Lord of the Ring fans, how about the Eye of Sauron? Don't forget the apple owl. And construction sites are always good for humorous fun. Blech. And then we have, of course, the beautiful Venus de Bark. And this, we're going to need a bigger boat picture, is Jaws turning into the face of Satan himself. And last but not least, the forest giant coming to get you, I suppose. Now, this is not a good or bad thing being experienced, but it is something to be aware of as it affects your perception of the world around you. At this point, you must also realize the problems present when you might want to share your experience with others. No two people are alike in how they perceive their surroundings. So don't be surprised when your friend does not react in the manner that you hoped for when you show your great discovery to them. You'll probably get a response like, "I don't see anything." and making some form of presentation with pictures of arrows and red circles in the hope of persuading them will be of no avail. At this point, you should probably stop trying to convince others. Your mind has played a trick on you, and that will be okay, for the most part. Sadly, there are those who become ensnared by their interpretation of what pareidolia is showing them. They become convinced that they are outward bound with indisputable evidence on a brave new adventure, picking up followers along the way. What is really happening is that they have discovered and entered a rabbit hole. At this point, a routine matter pertaining to how the human mind works by providing a source of protection for its host has been sidetracked, becoming an obsessive behavior on the part of the host. And what form will it take, pardon the pun, is up to the individual. Now, I'm sure that there are people out there who take great delight in trying to fool others with the pictures of bush faces, distant shapes, and ominous shadows. But there are also those who believe that what they are seeing could be the real thing because their mind tells them so. Is pareidolia a positive experience, or is it just merely a dirty window into one's own ego? That's a question. Maybe it all comes down to an individual's intent. I think that Eric Butterworth will get the last word here about the people in that rabbit hole. Quote, "You see things not as they are, but as you are." End quote. That's all I got. Thanks for listening, guys. Time to feed the dog and grab a crisp cold kokanee. Hey, Brew. Where are you, boy?